It's November. It's the first week in November. So this whole week on BookTube is definitely going to be all about October wrap-ups. And I'm going to be no different. What's up, guys? Today is Wednesday, which means, yes, you guessed it, it's hashtag Book Wednesday, and a day week where I talk to you guys about books. And as you guess by the title of this video, it's called TBR Thoughts and Wrap-Ups. I'm going to talk about my TBR and my thoughts on actual TBRs and what I think of TBRs as terms of videos and choosing books each month to read. About a year ago, I decided to scrap the whole TBR video and selecting 3 to 4 books that I was going to read for that month. And the reason why I completely utterly scrapped it is because I was finding I was putting myself under too much pressure to read books that when it came down to it, that I may have not had an interest in reading. Not that I didn't want to read the actual book, but I may have read one book and it just put me off other books and I want to read different types of books. For anyone who doesn't understand, I read a lot of fantasy books, and when you read a heavy fantasy, sometimes reading another fantasy right after that can be quite heavy, and that's the only way I can describe it. It can be quite heavy. One example was I read Game of Thrones book 1 in Game of Thrones, and I went to read book 2 in Game of Thrones, and it was just a no-go. It was so difficult to do. I just couldn't get my head into it. Not to say that Game of Thrones book number 2 is a bad book, but I just couldn't get my head around it because I was so brain fried after the first Game of Thrones book, even though it was a savagely good book. So naturally, I scrapped TBRs completely. I just started picking books up. I said, I'll read this one. When I read it, I read it. When I finish it, I finish it, and so on and so forth. And I wasn't doing the videos anymore. Last month, in October 2017, I decided that I was positive about reading more books because I do have a reading goal set in mind for the end of the year, and I'm kind of slacking in it. But I also had that positive drive to read more books than 1 a month or 2 a month. So I said to myself, do you know what? I give myself some initiative. I will go about doing a TBR, and I'll make that TBR public, and I will read these books this month. I was positive, okay? Let's just get this that I was positive about. And this then leads me on into the books I chose. So I chose 4 books. The Call by Peadar Ó Gilleann. Book number 2 in the School of Good and Evil, A World Without Princes. I'm not even going to attempt to read this author's name because I can't pronounce it. Ice Like Fire by Sarah Rashk. King's Cage by Victoria Aveyard. 3 of the 4 books in this list would be deemed to be either sci-fi, fantasy. One of these books, I would call it a fantasy horror, and I thought myself, do you know what? These are all similar books in type, and I was in a mood for a bit of horror and fantasy because it was October and Halloween was on the brain. Unfortunately, I knew at the time of doing my TBR that I wouldn't get through all 4 books because how late in the month I decided to actually do it. But I gave it a whirl. Which brings me on into my wrap up for October. The first book I have to mark off for October is The Name of the Wind by Patrick Rothfuss. This wasn't on my October TBR because I began this book back over the summer. I only completed it in October, around the 13th of October. And I'm not going to lie, I'm delighted that I read this book, that I actually completed this book. This book, whew. If you want to know what I thought about this book, you can click the card above my head and you can go watch that video. And if you also don't forget, if you like the video, don't forget to hit the like button as well. And the subscribe. Yeah, hit the subscribe button. That's very important. Officially going into my October wrap up is, of course, number 1 on the list is The Call by Peadar Ó Gilleann. And this is the horror fantasy book. And it's so good. I actually really enjoyed it, and if you want to know what I thought of this book, I will be releasing a video review of this in the coming week or so. And if you want to see that video, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and hit the notification button as well while you're there. Book number 2 in my wrap up for October is The School of Good and Evil, book number 2, A World Without Princes. Again, it is a good book. It's not a brilliant book. The story is a bit but it's still enjoyable, and I still actually quite liked it, and I still do like the characters in the story. Again, I will say it's not as good as the first book, but I've heard the third book is supposed to be really, really good. If you want to know what I thought of this book, I will be releasing a video review in the next week or so, or in the coming weeks, of this book. But again, if you want to see that video, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and hit the notification button so you'll be notified when I do upload such videos. Unfortunately, that's where my wrap up truly ends, as unfortunately I did begin Ice Like Fire, but I am sadly about 5 chapters from the end. I was really hoping I would get through those 5 chapters before making this video, but I didn't. Now, there is a likelihood that I will be about 2 chapters from finishing this book by the time you're watching this video. I may even have the book completed. So I would like to say I'm going to have a wrap up video of this book in the next coming weeks as well, with my thoughts of it. And if you want to see that video, of course, again, hit the subscribe button and hit the notification button while you're there. So I am hoping to complete this book at least by tonight or tomorrow. And yeah, it could even be completed by now while you're watching this video. I could have already said I've finished this book. But yeah, I have 5 chapters left. Just 5. I've done well. I've done well. I got 5 chapters left. Some credit, please. Of the TBR that I set aside for October, the only book that didn't manage to get cracked open was The King's Cage by Victoria Aveyard. And unfortunately, I did contemplate between this and Ice Like Fire. I tossed the coin in trying to figure out which one I was going to read first. And I chose Ice Like Fire generally because I was looking for Ice Like Fire since I finished Snow Like Ashes, and I couldn't find it anywhere. And I really wanted to read it, and I really wanted to know where the story was going. I really liked Snow Like Ashes, and I really wanted to know what's going to happen with the story. And so this went on the kind of the back burner. I kind of knew I wasn't going to get through 4 books in the month anyway. I said I was close to get to 3. I was lucky to get to the end nearly of Ice Like Fire, and really enjoying the books. But I will be reading this one next. And that, my friends, is the video. If you haven't subscribed, click the subscribe button. It helps me big time because I really want to hit 500 subscribers by Christmas. If I can do that, that'd be amazing. If you like any of the books in this video, please go ahead and check them out on their GoodReads pages. I will link it all down below if you want to do that. Also, don't forget to hit me up on GoodReads itself. Don't forget to give this video a good old like. If you haven't subscribed, don't forget to click over here to subscribe. And I will see you all on Saturday. Peace!